There's an abandoned building just outside the city, tucked away like a scar, hidden by trees and broken fencing. Locals say it used to be an old boarding house back in the 1950s. Over the years, it's been everything: a halfway house, a shelter, even a psychiatric ward. Now, it's nothing more than for crumbling walls and a roof. Yet, the stories have never stopped. People say that if you stay there, you'll see shadows moving, hear doors creaking, and sometimes voices. I had heard all these stories growing up, but I always dismissed them. I'm not one for ghost tales. I like facts and science, the kind of things you can see and touch. But when my friends dared me to spend a night there alone, I couldn't say no. So, on a cold October night, I grabbed a flashlight, some snacks, and my phone, and headed to that crumbling building on the edge of town. The air was biting, and the wind howled through the trees, a chorus of shivering leaves and rustling branches. The building itself was as I expected: old, dark, and dead silent. The windows were shattered, the doors barely hanging on by their hinges. Inside, it was worse: paint peeled off the walls in long, thin strips, and the smell. It was an awful mix of mold and something I couldn't quite place. It almost smelled like rusted metal. I made my way to the central hall, where I decided to set up for the night. I remember setting my flashlight down and trying to get comfortable on an old mattress I found there, telling myself I'd last the night without a hitch. But then, I heard it. Just as the silence settled around me, a sound drifted through the dark hallway: a faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone drumming their fingers on a wooden table. I shone my flashlight around, but there was nothing, just darkness and empty rooms. I chalked it up to the wind and settled back in. It was quiet again for a while. But then, maybe an hour later, the tapping returned, louder this time, closer. I whispered to myself, "It's just your mind playing tricks." But as soon as I said it, I heard breathing. Not mine. This was raspy, almost wheezing, like someone struggling to pull in each breath. I held my breath, trying to make it stop, to pretend it was all in my head. But the breathing got louder, closer, until it was right next to my ear, and then it stopped. For a few moments, I sat in the dark, every hair on my body standing on end. I decided that maybe I'd heard enough for one night. Grabbing my flashlight, I aimed for the door, but as soon as I reached the threshold, I froze. There, at the end of the hallway, was a shadow, human-shaped, but warped, like it was leaning against the wall. I whispered hello, knowing full well I didn't want a response. It didn't move. It just stood there, and as I watched, the shadow began to sink, like it was sliding down the wall, melting into the floor. I turned and bolted, heading for the nearest exit, only to realize that every door I passed was locked tight. I finally made it to the back of the building, where I found an open window and scrambled through it, not daring to look back. But just as I landed outside, the air went cold. Not just chilly, freezing, like the middle of winter. I looked up and saw it again, a figure standing in the window, watching me, its face twisted into a smile. I didn't sleep that night, and even though I tried to write off what happened, the next day, my friends noticed. They saw the way I'd keep glancing over my shoulder, the way I'd jump at any sound. To this day, I can't explain what I saw. But every time I close my eyes, I see that shadow, slipping down the wall, and that face grinning down at me from the window.